Hi everyone. So let's talk just briefly about Xenophanes. Xenophanes, of course, lived from 570 to 475 BCE. He's what we might call an early skeptic and a critic of traditional Greek religion. Um, so he's infamous for attacking the Homeric depiction of the deities and Hesiod, of course, um, as as adulterers, thieves, and murderers. For instance, you can recall when Kronos dismembers his father Uranus's genitals in Hesiod's Theogony, and in Homer, the gods have adulterous affairs and put people to death and all kinds of things. And Xenophanes is an early critic to say, well, the deities are depicted as committing heinous acts that human beings would be put to death for, and that's not right. So he's quoted as sort of there's a longer quote, but he says something along the lines of, well, what's interesting to me is that the Greek gods in every way look like and act like Greek people themselves. For if you see in Ethiopia the gods are black, and in Thrace the gods have red hair and blue eyes, and if animals had gods, they would look like animals and things like that. So he's trying to question the way people think, and some people have suggested he's kind of an early atheist. I don't. That's not right, because he's not trying to tell you what the truth is, but he's trying to question or get you to question the ways in which you come to your beliefs. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that your beliefs are false. That would be a genetic fallacy. But because you can come to a true belief in an incorrect way. But he's trying to get you to be skeptical and to think harder. I think his argument isn't really about the gods. I think it's about our ways of seeing the world and trying to see things from different perspectives. And I think it's even more than that, because his thought is skeptic. The idea is, if you think you really know something, you probably haven't thought deep enough about it. And even more than that, you never really know anything, because our minds have limited access to the truth. Now, he attacks the picture of the gods that Homer and Hesiod portray. And he suggests that, a true god can't be like that. But he suggests that, there's sort of one... He's an early Greek to argue for what we call Greek monotheism. Not like the Jewish and Christian and so forth versions of monotheism, but he kind of argues for one mystical God that doesn't look like humanity at all. Instead, it goes beyond human reason, is unembodied, without parts, unchanging, unknowable, but probably impersonal, not personal like the God of the biblical tradition. He doesn't talk about what philosophers, when they talk about God today, with maximal excellence and things like that. He doesn't talk about God as being loving. God's more of an it to Xenophanes. So he doesn't really talk about God's goodness the way we might today. But he uses what we call apophatic theology in many ways when he talks about the only things we can say about this supreme reality is, you can talk about things that the supreme reality is not. It's hard to say what it is, but we can talk about the things that it's not. It's definitely not the deities that Homer presents. And so his ideas would influence Greek monotheism, where the ultimate principle, the ultimate reality is impersonal, while Jews, Christians, Muslims, and other monotheists throughout history, because there were other groups like that, they would argue that the ultimate principle must be personal, because impersonal things don't have wills. For instance, when we talk about Pythagoras and his numbers as the creative principles, they're abstract ideas, but difficult to talk about in ways of being causes of things. Now, Heraclitus is known as the dark philosopher, and this is partially because he speaks in riddles. Plato, I believe it was, read him, and people asked what he thought, and he said, well, the things I understood I thought were excellent, and the things I didn't understand, those were probably excellent too. But yeah, he's called the dark philosopher. He speaks in riddles. He'll say things like, the path up and down are the same. Cool, and he'll get angry if you don't understand what the hell he's trying to say. And he'll say, like, seawater is the most pristine and the most polluted. But the idea here is that, it's good for fish, but it's bad for us. There's two realities in one. And, only, I don't know, if you were a god or something, you would see everything at once. Then you might become a little indifferent to everything. But, let me see here. So he'll say something like, you can't step in the same river twice. And the point here is that, the river has changed. The river changes, so it's not the same. And it's even more than that, because now you're not even the same. Everything is in a constant flux, what he calls an ever-living fire. The only change, so to speak, is change for Heraclitus. And what he's getting at here is not just, whoa, man, that's deep. He's trying to get about the fundamental ideas behind how the universe works. So everything is in a constant flux. But at least, I guess the only thing that doesn't change is change, right? Well, wait a second. That's a brain buster. But, if you change, then is there still you, Heraclitus is still kind of saying that there's no you in a certain way. You are not the same person as you were when you were a kid. You're a different person from moment to moment. He doesn't have a concept, he doesn't have a concept of the divine that doesn't change. So, in a way, he's postmodern. He's a postmodern thinker, and it's true that a lot of postmodern thinkers have sought to get rid of Plato and Aristotle and go back to thinkers like Heraclitus because of his ideas of change and fluidity and things that are popular in academic discourse these days. But before we leave, so you are not you, and there's always, now we say like your atoms or the things that make you up change every 7 years and stuff like that. So you committed a crime, you can say, well, I'm not the same person who committed that crime 7 years ago. That's still not going to hold up in court. But he has this idea of fire. Fire, an ever-living fire is this constant change. I think it's a metaphor for saying that, you must destroy your old self to become your new self. And I think eventually the idea of infinite flux. The danger here with the postmodern idea, the danger is everything's changing, so it becomes difficult to know. It kind of destroys any chance to know anything at all. But I think Heraclitus would have a response to that and say that in some way, the constant change secures an identity. Somewhere I read that when you make a salad, you have a salad dressing, and you have to keep stirring the salad dressing for it to be a salad dressing, or else all the components of it they separate, and then the salad dressing loses its identity, and no longer salad dressing. So you are that person that keeps constantly changing, so to speak. Following that, Heraclitus says that strife is the father and king of all things, and I think that means you have to destroy in order to create. You have to kill to eat. Even if you're a vegetarian, you got to kill that plant. It has a certain life force to it, if you will. Heraclitus became very popular. Modern philosophers of the 1800s, Hegel, Marx, Nietzsche, were highly influenced by Heraclitus. And finally, Heraclitus is the first person to talk about the logos. That's Logos, logos, which is that's the rationality behind the universe. He talks about kind of a universal rationality, and humans have a sense of this rationality that we can attempt to tap into. We have a capacity to listen to this universal understanding, and if all of this doesn't make sense to you, a lot of it doesn't make sense to me either. And Heraclitus would just call you an idiot that you just don't understand what he's saying, because sometimes he'll say things that seem like they don't even go together at all. But it's important to remember these concepts, and right now don't worry about it if they don't seem to work together for you. But remember, you can't step in the same river twice, constant flux, and the idea of a universal rational principle is the logos. And early Christians take up on this, where, in the Gospel of St. John, at the beginning where it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and what God was, the Word was. That's the word for word in Greek there is logos. So you get the idea that God's logos, God's rational principle is divine. So there you go. So remember some of those kinds of ideas. Remember when we get to Xenophanes, his critique of your ability to think critically, and remember Pythagoras with ideas about numbers being divine, and the idea of abstract, non-material principles behind the material world, unlike Thales and Anaximander, who were looking for primal, the primal element, the first element, whether it be water or air, those are material things. And Pythagoras was looking for non-material things. And this is when you start to get ideas of the human soul. And he has the ideas of the transmigration of souls, or reincarnation, or metempsychosis. And he hated beans, probably because they let you fart, and the farts let out your soul. And this is true. Well, I don't know if that's true, but it's true that that was an idea going around in those days. But also because if you look at the bean stems, the leg, he thought that maybe the souls, that's how the souls come up from the underworld to be reincarnated. And the leg hemoglobin looks like blood, and it's the same thing that they're putting into Beyond Burgers with, the fake meat in order to look like real juicy, bloody meat and stuff like that. So I probably won't have a ton of this on the midterm. I have I've uploaded a study guide because I wasn't sure how else. I'm not good at formatting these things, and I wasn't sure how else to go forward with it. But those are the sorts of things that are going to be on the midterm. There might be some questions out of the terms. I might change things around a little bit, but not too much. Um, but those are the sorts of things to expect. I know it seems like a lot, but you can do it.